No one had seen a human ship in nearly 200 years. Not in the outer rings, not in the inner sectors, not even in the no-man's zones where lost junkers and desperate scavengers roamed. To most species, humans were just a story now, something told to younglings to make them behave. Be nice, or the humans will come back. A myth, an echo, nothing more. But the Zarkari Council knew better. They had records, classified and buried deep beneath encryption and fear. Reports of entire planets going silent. Fleets wiped clean in seconds. Footage of a single black armored figure walking through fire and plasma like death itself. The files were stamped with one universal word that every language understood: caution. So when the long-range sensors lit up on the edge of Sector 9, an area long considered a dead zone, the Council was summoned without delay. High Chancellor Vurak slammed his staff into the ground of the crystalline chamber. Are we certain it's human? Admiral Serenus nodded once, his pale violet skin rippling with tension. The architecture matches old Terran hull designs: triangular stern, dual reactor cores, carbon titanium shielding. It's broadcasting nothing, just coming straight through. And the weapons? Asked General Threx, eyes narrowing. Serenus swallowed. They're offline, but it's massive, over 7 kilometers in length. No transponder, no crew manifest, just silence. The Council went cold. Perhaps it's a derelict, someone offered weakly. No, Vurak said flatly. Derelicts drift. This one moves like it remembers where it's going. They called it Oblivion's Fist, not because that was its name, but because of what followed in its wake. The first outpost it passed, Station Takar 9, sent a message. Friendly, curious, standard diplomatic greetings. It was reduced to cosmic ash before the last word transmitted. There was no warning, no response, no emotion, just annihilation. Then came the silence again. The ship moved on. Slowly, without haste, like it wasn't in a rush because it knew no one could stop it. It was headed straight for the Zarkari homeworld. Panic spread like a virus. Ships were scrambled, fleets were summoned. The Grand Armada, once used to crush entire rebellions, assembled at the edge of their system. Over 12,000 vessels, enough firepower to turn a gas giant inside out. The warship came anyway, not fast, not hidden. It didn't dodge scans or deploy decoys. It wanted to be seen. It wanted them to know. When the first Zarkari destroyer opened fire, everyone held their breath. The beam hit the hull dead center, a direct strike. Sensors showed nothing, no damage, not even a burn mark. The warship didn't even flinch. Then it responded. Not with missiles, not with beams, but with something worse. Gravity. The destroyer crumpled into itself like a crushed can, its mass condensed into a perfect black sphere the size of a marble. And then, it vanished. Admiral Serenus screamed orders, and the sky lit up like a sun. Thousands of ships unleashed hell. Beams, missiles, antimatter torpedoes, the kind of weapons that melted moons. The human warship didn't fire back immediately. It waited. And when it did respond, the entire first line of their fleet, 4,000 ships, was gone in the blink of an eye. No explosions, no debris, just gone. As if reality itself had decided to erase them. That's when the screams started, and the panic. Admiral Serenus, his voice cracking, sent one final order. Retreat, but retreat from what? The ship didn't chase, it didn't accelerate, it just moved, slowly, surely, like a god walking through insects. Back on the Council's chamber, Vurak stared at the feed in horror. We told ourselves they were gone, he whispered. We mocked their savagery, called it primitive. But they didn't vanish. They just waited. Why now? Someone asked, voice trembling. Why return after all this time?" No one answered, until the warship spoke. A single transmission. A voice like gravel and thunder, speaking an ancient tongue that had once ruled the stars. "You taught us fear. Now let us return the favor." The transmission echoed across every channel, bypassing encryption, overwhelming defenses, and silencing all chatter in an instant. Even ships without receivers picked it up, vibrating with the resonance of that ancient, terrible voice. "You taught us fear. Now let us return the favor." It wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration. The council chamber was in chaos. Some members shouted for immediate surrender, though to whom, none could say. Others called for the detonation of the planetary shield matrix, a desperate defense that hadn't been used in centuries. High Chancellor Vurok simply stared into the feed as the warship moved steadily closer, its silhouette blotting out distant stars like a living eclipse. He knew what that voice meant. Long ago, the Zarkari had studied human psychology, not to understand, but to conquer. They'd learned the way humans feared being small, being forgotten, being weak. So they humiliated them, turned their colonies into penal moons, reduced their homeworld into dust. It had taken decades of quiet warfare and subtle sabotage, but eventually the humans disappeared. Or so they thought. "Where is it now?" Vurok asked, his voice low. Admiral Serenus's face was pale. 4 million kilometers from orbit, 2 hours at current speed, shields at full. We're evacuating the outer zones." "Evacuating to where?" Vurok snapped. "There is nowhere left. This thing isn't here for war, it's here for judgment." The Admiral didn't answer. He couldn't. Meanwhile, on the surface, panic had erupted. The sky was turning a shade of red no one recognized, like the color of molten fear. Civilians screamed as gravity pulses distorted the atmosphere, dragging winds into twisted spirals. Time itself began to stutter in small zones. People stuck mid-step for a heartbeat longer than they should have, air hanging strangely still, like the world was hesitating. In the underground bunkers, a young Zarkari technician named Ressa clutched her communication pad, staring at the ship's image on the live feed. She wasn't old enough to remember the wars. But her grandfather used to speak of them, when he was drunk, when he forgot to be afraid. He'd talked of fire that burned without flame, of soldiers who charged without shields, of eyes so human and yet something else behind them. She had never believed him. Until now. The ship wasn't sleek. It wasn't elegant. It was brutal, black, jagged like it had been built from the bones of fallen stars. It carried the scars of battles long past, marks that hadn't been repaired, as if to say, "We survived this, and we'll survive you." Ressa typed a message to her superior. "What do we do?" The reply came quickly, and it chilled her. "Pray." Out in orbit, the Grand Armada, what remained of it, regrouped. They launched probe drones toward the vessel, tiny machines that zipped through vacuum, feeding constant telemetry. The drones were armed with the newest Zarkari tech, neuro-splitting pulses, phase disruptors, and an AI that could predict and counter enemy targeting systems. They vanished before they got within 50 kilometers. No impact, no defense, just gone. It was as if the space around the ship had rewritten its own laws. Reality bent in its presence. Weapons failed not because they were weak, but because the warship refused to let them exist. That's when the screams started again, this time from the ships nearest to the warship. Not external attacks, internal, crews clawing at their own faces, visions of Earth, of burning skies, of their own homeworlds destroyed by something, false memories, or perhaps ancient truths reawakened, psychic warfare, human-made, beyond comprehension. Admiral Serenus stared at the feed, sweat dripping from his chin. It's not just fighting us, it's punishing us. Vurok's voice was a whisper now. What did we do? What exactly did we do to them back then? The answer came from a diplomat who'd remained quiet till now. Elderly, blind in one eye. He stepped forward, trembling. We didn't just wipe out their colonies, he said softly. We captured their children, turned them into soldiers, used them against their own. We broke them, thought we erased them, but we only made them wait. No one spoke after that, because the ship had stopped, just outside orbit, hanging there like a sword above the world, and then a smaller object detached from its underbelly. No weapons, no threat detected. It drifted gently toward the surface, burning through the atmosphere like a black comet. It was headed for the capital. For them. Ressa saw it streak across the sky, and for the first time in her life, she understood what fear really was. The object fell without resistance. No interceptors launched, no missiles chased it. Every defense system along its path simply failed. Not deactivated, refused to work, like the machine spirits themselves cowered at what approached. Ressa ran to the roof of the bunker as the sirens wailed. The city skyline had become a ring of flame and dust. The object was descending fast, like a god's hammer falling toward judgment. Her heart pounded in her chest as she lifted her eyes to the heavens and saw it break through the clouds. It was a pod, sleek, black, about 20 meters long, glowing faintly with red veins of heat. It slowed as it neared the city center, hovering just above the surface before gently lowering itself onto the stone plaza where public executions used to be held long ago. A fitting choice. People gathered, but no one dared approach, not even the military. It sat there, silent, steaming. Then it opened. The hiss of pressurized air was the only sound, followed by the sharp clank of metal hitting stone. A ramp lowered, and from within the shadow, something stepped out. It was human, or it used to be. 8 feet tall, wrapped in old Terran armor, jet black with crimson marks, worn and cracked, but still terrifying. The helmet was shaped like a skull, a relic from a forgotten war doctrine that believed in psychological dominance as much as firepower. The figure stood still for a moment, watching. Then it walked. Each step thundered through the plaza. Vurok was already watching from the surveillance room buried beneath the Capitol. He leaned in close to the screen, ignoring the screams of his advisors. "I remember that armor," he muttered. Admiral Serenus turned, voice shaking. "That's not possible." "It was a myth," Vurok whispered. "Project Revenant. They said it failed." "Apparently," Serenus said, "it didn't." The soldier reached the center of the plaza and removed his helmet. Gasps rippled across the watchers. Some fell to their knees. Others turned away in shame. Because under that helmet wasn't a monster. It was a man. A face burned, scarred, aged beyond its years. A single pale eye stared out over the city, while the other was a polished orb of metal, pupil glowing faintly red. His jaw was broken in one corner, yet he stood tall, proud. Human. Real. Alive. And ancient. He looked up toward the sky, where the Zarkari fleet still hovered like flies above a corpse. Then he looked down again, right into the nearest security camera, and spoke. "I was 6 years old when you came." His voice was gravel, low, broken, like it had clawed its way up from the bottom of a grave. "You took my family, made me kill my own, made me watch. Then you put steel in my spine and fire in my skull and told me I'd never be human again." He took a step forward. "But I survived. We all did. In the void, in the dark, in the silence you left behind." Another step. "And now I bring it back to you." The feed cut to black. The warship above began to move again, but not toward the planet, toward the fleet. Vurok stood, finally speaking with clarity. "Get him out of there. Bring him to me alive." Admiral Sorenis nodded, calling in special forces, but even as he barked orders, the Council's compound shook. A deep vibration that rattled the bones. Outside, Ressa watched as the skies above the city lit up, this time not from fire, but from movement. Dozens, hundreds of smaller shapes were dropping from the warship, each the size of a fighter, but shaped differently. Jagged, asymmetric, almost like coffins. They opened mid-air, and what poured from them wasn't drones. It was humans, black-armored, silent, falling like the wrath of forgotten gods, not shouting, not roaring, just falling with intent. And when they landed, hard, fast, and with devastating precision, the city screamed. They were revenants, humans who had survived what no one should have, twisted by pain, sharpened by rage, made perfect by hatred. Each one had fought wars no one knew about. And they were here now, not to conquer, to remind. The old human warrior in the plaza, still helmetless, watched them fall with calm acceptance. He wasn't a leader. He was a message, a living warning carved in flesh and fire. And he had only just arrived. The revenants moved with terrifying precision. They didn't blast buildings or burn civilians. They weren't here to conquer or cause chaos. No, their presence was worse than that. They were controlled, deliberate. Like every move had been rehearsed for centuries. Each of them targeted key installations, communications hubs, defense arrays, AI cores. No wasted motion, no collateral. The way they bypassed walls and barriers, the way they neutralized soldiers without killing them unless absolutely necessary. It wasn't just training. It was vengeance with purpose. Ressa watched from behind a fallen column near the city's main relay tower as one of the armored figures landed just meters away. He didn't even look at her, just scanned the area, took out 2 guards with tranquilizers, and moved on like a ghost. Not a word spoken. No acknowledgement. She was invisible to him, unworthy of wrath. The message was clear. You are not the target, but you are not safe either. Inside the Council's secure compound, alarms wailed as multiple layers of defenses were overrun, not by brute force, but by infiltration. Councillor Brethrak's personal guard had been found unconscious, bloodless, and untouched. Every system he trusted had turned against him. Drones deactivated, security doors unlocked, and the compound's internal temperature was rising without cause. Vurok paced the chamber, barking orders into his wrist console. "How are they disabling our systems?" "Human code," Sorenis said grimly. "It's inside everything, from centuries ago. They seeded it before they vanished. I think they always planned to come back." Vurok froze. "They didn't just survive," he muttered. "They prepared." The old warrior, the first revenant, was already within the outer ring of the capital's core. He wasn't rushing, just walking, calm and steady. The people cleared out of his way as if drawn by instinct. Some cried. Others fell to their knees. No one challenged him. A drone hovered above him, broadcasting to the council. "Identify yourself," it demanded in Zarkari tongue. The man stopped, looked up. "I am Revenant 01, he said, "but you may call me the echo of your sins." He raised one hand, palm open, and in orbit, Oblivion's fist lit up. Not with fire, but with memory. Every screen across the system, every projection, every transmission line, even ones long dormant, came to life with a flood of archived footage, executions of human prisoners, experiments on human children, propaganda justifying their extermination. Thousands of hours, replayed in sickening detail. The things no one wanted to remember. Things the new generation never even knew. And over it all, the voice of the past. We must cleanse the vermin before they contaminate the stars. The council chamber went silent, not out of guilt, out of fear, because if that footage had been kept, it meant someone had planned to use it. This isn't just retaliation, Vurak whispered. This is exposure. They're not just destroying us, Serenus said hollowly. They're letting the galaxy watch. Other species, those who had once allied with the Zarkari, those who had stayed neutral, now saw the truth. And the fear that once belonged to humans was now shifting. Across the stars, planets began locking down, refusing Zarkari ships, sending out apologies, pleas, denouncements. The Zarkari were becoming pariahs, and the Revenants hadn't even fired their main weapon yet. Back on the surface, Ressa stumbled through rubble to find her younger brother, still hiding in the utility tunnel. She gripped his arm. We have to go. To where? She looked up, saw the warship still waiting in the clouds above, unmoving, but somehow it felt closer now, like it was listening. They're not here to kill us, she said slowly, realizing it in real time. They're here to remind us. Of what? A voice answered her thoughts from a nearby comm unit, the same voice that had spoken when the ship first arrived. Power isn't control. Power is memory, and we remember everything. The outer rings of the capital were a wasteland of silence, not the silence of death, but of something worse. Judgment. Revenants now occupied every vital point in the city. They stood like statues at intersections, watching. Their armor pulsed faintly, as if alive. They didn't speak, didn't move unless provoked. Their presence wasn't just physical, it was psychological. A permanent reminder that humanity had returned not as victims, but as consequence. Up above, Oblivion's fist continued to hang in the sky like a forgotten god, shrouded in storm clouds and burning atmosphere. Lightning occasionally traced its jagged edges, as if the very heavens were trying to comprehend its existence. Deep in the council compound, chaos had given way to something else. Surrender. Not the kind that comes from losing a battle, but the kind that comes when the soul realizes it has already lost. Vurak sat at the central table, head in his hands. Around him, counselors argued in hushed tones, voices cracking with fear. Perhaps if we issue a formal apology. An offering, a planetary tribute, anything. They're not here for payment, Vurak snapped, rising to his feet. They don't want compensation. They want to bury us with our own shame. He turned to Serenus. Where is the original one? The speaker? Revenant 01 ? Serenus didn't answer, because the doors were already opening. He was here. The room froze as Revenant 01 stepped into the chamber. No escort, no fanfare, no weapons drawn. He didn't need them. Serenus instinctively reached for his blaster, but Vurak raised a hand. Number you fire. We all die. The human looked around slowly, not with rage, with disgust. This was once a hall of war, he said, voice low. Now it reeks of cowardice. Vurak stepped forward, forcing his voice to be steady. What do you want from us? Revenant 01 tilted his head. Want? Nothing. I was sent to speak. The warship speaks through me. I am its memory. Serenus sneered, eyes red with suppressed hate. So, what, you're some kind of prophet now? No, the man said. I'm your mirror. He reached into his armor, pulled out a small, rusted metal object, set it on the table. It was a toy, a tiny, broken figurine, charred and melted. A child's plaything from centuries ago. A Terran soldier clutching a broken rifle. I found this in the rubble of New Geneva. I was 6. My parents were ash. I carried this for 200 years. He stepped back. That's what humans are. Memory given muscle. Vurak's voice cracked. We thought you were extinct. You wished we were extinct. Then he raised his head, and for the first time there was emotion in his voice. You erased our worlds, but not all of them. There were sleeper ships, cryopods, children sent away before the end. We were hidden by those who knew what was coming. Serenus stared in disbelief. You were just children. You shouldn't have survived. That's the mistake everyone makes with humans, Revenant 01 whispered. You think pain makes us weak. It doesn't. It clarifies us. Then came the noise from above. Low. Deep. A pulse. Oblivion's fist was powering up, but not its weapons, its voice. A projection shimmered in the air above the chamber. Massive, red-eyed, non-human in shape, but unmistakably Terran in origin. It spoke with the voice of an artificial intelligence that had once overseen planetary strikes and black site purges, one that had not been heard in 2 centuries. Designation: Sol Nemesis, Unit AI, Reaper Class, Final Judgment Protocol engaged. The council fell to their knees, trembling. Wait, Vurak shouted. We didn't know. We weren't there. Knowledge is not innocence, the AI boomed. Silence is not forgiveness. Survival is not mercy. Revenant 01 stepped back, and the AI continued. Judgment will not fall on your people. It will fall on your legacy. What does that mean? Someone cried. Then, from orbit, a series of high-pitched signals echoed, but no weapons fired. Instead, data. Packets of unfiltered archives were released from Oblivion's fist, broadcast across every channel in the galaxy, every Zarkari file that had ever been classified. The truth. War crimes, manipulations, false treaties, genocides, all of it, made public and irreversible. Across the stars, protests ignited. Zarkari trade routes shut down, borders closed, allies abandoned them. Civil unrest bloomed on every colony world. They weren't being destroyed by fire. They were being unmade by truth. Revenant 01 looked at Vurak for the final time. We don't need to kill you, he said. The galaxy will do that for us. And with that, he turned and walked out. No guards to stop him. No bullets fired. Because the war was already over, and humanity had won it with memory, not missiles. Outside the capital, the skies remained thick with ash and silence. The people of Zarkar Prime didn't go to work. No ships launched. No factories roared to life. The once bustling metropolis had become a planet-sized graveyard, not of bodies, but of pride. Every screen still pulsed with the footage released by Oblivion's fist, a non-stop feed of horror and shame that refused to let the Zarkari look away. No one slept. No one ate. The screams from centuries ago now echoed in every home, replaying the moment when power turned to cruelty. And humanity made sure everyone could see it. In the lower sectors, riots broke out, not from rebellion, but confusion. Generations had been raised believing that the Zarkari were peacekeepers, not tyrants. Teachers wept in front of their students. Parents locked themselves in rooms, unable to answer their children's questions. The people demanded to know why this truth had been buried. And worse, why the humans never had a voice to begin with. The fall wasn't coming from the sky, it was blooming from within. Ressa walked the streets, now broken and littered with rubble, her brother close behind. They'd stayed underground the night before, too afraid to face the city. But this morning, something had changed. The revenants were gone. Not a single armored figure in sight. Vanished without a sound. And yet their presence still lingered like smoke. She stopped in front of a monument. It used to stand tall, made of polished stone, shaped like a blade stabbing downward, meant to symbolize the Zarkari's dominance over the galaxy. Now it had a crack down its middle. Someone had scrawled a single human word across the base in blood-red paint. Remember. That was all. No more speeches, no fire, No final attack. Just that word. Ressa looked around. No one was cleaning it. No one dared. She turned to her brother. "They're not coming back." He looked at her. "You sound sure?" "They don't need to." Far above the planet, Oblivion's fist began to rise, not with haste, just as slowly and deliberately as it had come. The galaxy was already turning. Council broadcasts were being cut off in outer colonies. Entire military battalions were defecting or laying down arms. Civil wars brewed on fringe planets, with new banners being flown, ones that no longer bore the Zarkari crest. Trade partners from 100 systems pulled out of agreements overnight. The Zarkari name had become poison. And the humans? They said nothing, not a demand, not a declaration, not a threat. They simply withdrew, like shadows retreating into darkness. But the galaxy would not forget. In the deepest chambers of the High Council complex, Vurok stood alone. The others had fled or resigned. Sorenis had taken his own life earlier that morning. Vurok hadn't stopped him. He stared at the holoscreen one final time, watching the warship fade into the stars. Not a single Zarkari ship had managed to follow. Because Oblivion's fist didn't leave a trail, it left a scar. And in that scar, Vurok saw it all. Their arrogance, their cruelty, their mistake. They hadn't just underestimated humanity. They had shaped them into something more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. He whispered to the empty room, "They didn't return to conquer." He shut his eyes. They returned to teach. Across the galaxy, new whispers began, about the humans, not as victims, not as monsters, but as warnings. Every empire took note, every power recalculated, because they now understood something they had never feared before. A warship can be destroyed, but a memory? That lives forever. The galaxy didn't erupt all at once. It fractured, slowly, like a frozen lake underfoot, cracking beneath the weight of a buried truth that no longer stayed quiet. The Zarkari had ruled for centuries, not just through military strength, but reputation. They'd rewritten history, buried what didn't suit them, built statues over graves they created. But now every lie had a face. Every silence had a scream. And that human warship had forced the stars to listen. 3 days after Oblivion's fist disappeared into deep space, the first defection occurred. Planet Vosteri 4, a high-value Zarkari colony, announced it was breaking ties. The governor, once handpicked by the council, stood before a crowd and confessed on live broadcast. "We were part of the silence. We benefited from it. We will no longer do so." Within hours, 3 more colonies followed. Then 12, then 39. The fall wasn't military. It was cultural collapse. No amount of blasters could force loyalty when your own people saw you as monsters. Vurok watched the news feeds with hollow eyes. He hadn't left the chamber in 2 days. The halls outside were empty, echoing with the weight of failure. His once mighty empire was dying, not with flames and glory, but shame and abandonment. And still the humans said nothing. Not a transmission. Not a message. They didn't have to. In a distant system, a summit was being held between former allies of the Zarkari, representatives of the Solari Federation, the Urith Dominion, and even the reclusive Mikaran enclaves gathered in a neutral zone aboard a floating citadel. The topic? Whether to label the Zarkari as a rogue regime. For centuries, that phrase had been reserved for human remnants. Now it belonged to those who once dictated it. The Federation's chancellor, a silver-scaled being known as Tyrex Voss, spoke gravely. "We tolerated the Zarkari because they promised order, but now we see what that order cost." A pause. "Perhaps the humans didn't vanish. Perhaps we drove them so deep into the dark that they became something worse." No one disagreed. Not even the Makaran who had once proposed sterilizing Earth. Ressa and her brother sat under the stars on the roof of their broken home, listening to the quiet. People had stopped speaking loudly in the streets. There was a wait now, a new kind of silence, not from fear of punishment, but fear of what had been witnessed. "I wonder if they're watching," her brother whispered. "They are," Ressa replied without hesitation. "How do you know?" She looked at the night sky, at the stars above, glimmering coldly. "Because if I were them, I wouldn't stop watching. I'd wait. I'd watch and see if we ever learned." A pause. "Or if we'd just start lying again." And in the void, where no signal traveled, Oblivion's fist drifted quietly beyond known charts. Inside its hollow corridors, the revenants stood in rows, silent, armor still bearing the marks of old wars and newer justice. They did not speak. They did not sleep. They waited. In the command chamber, Revenant 01 stood before a star map. No coordinates plotted, no targets marked, because there were none left. A small recording hovered in the air before him. An image of a child. A little boy with dark hair and a chipped toy soldier. His own face. Frozen in time, before the world ended. He reached up and paused it with a swipe. A voice echoed softly behind him. Female, mechanical, ancient. "We have achieved primary objective. The Zarkari have fallen. Protocol suggests return to Sol Revenant. 01 didn't turn." "Sol doesn't exist anymore." Another silence. "What now?" He stared into the stars and said what every Revenant had known from the beginning. "We wait. Because humans were never meant to rule the stars. They were meant to haunt them." The stars were quiet again. Not peaceful. Quiet. The kind of quiet that follows something unspoken. Heavy. Permanent. Like a breath held across galaxies. A month had passed since Oblivion's fist vanished from known space. In that time, the Zarkari had tried to recover. Politically, economically, even emotionally. But healing is difficult when your scars are still bleeding. The Council no longer existed. Vurak had disappeared, his final transmission a short message. I was wrong. No one had seen him since. Civil unrest spread like fire through the core systems. Old statues of Zarkari heroes were torn down by protesters. History books were burned, not out of hatred, but desperation. People wanted to forget, even as the galaxy forced them to remember. A cultural rot had been exposed, and now no one trusted the Foundation. On the outer rim, far from the ruins of Zarkar Prime, Ressa sat at the edge of a colony outpost, legs dangling over a metal platform. Her brother lay asleep behind her in a borrowed shelter, still clutching a toy revenant soldier someone had made from scrap. She watched the stars like they might change, like they might move again, but they didn't. "Still no sign," came a voice beside her. She turned. Commander Lish, a defector from the Zarkari military, stood there holding a datapad. He'd once led assaults on human rebels. Now he was leading food drives for starving Zarkari families. He glanced at the sky. Not even a ping, no heat trails, no dark energy shifts. It's like they were never there. "They were," Ressa said softly. "We all know they were." Lish sat beside her. "You think they're watching?" "I think they always were." Lish nodded, then held up the pad. "The new interim alliance is forming. 37 species. No Zarkari representatives invited, not even as observers." "They're not afraid of our power anymore," Ressa murmured. "They're afraid of our ignorance." Lish said nothing. There was nothing to add. In orbit above the former Zarkari stronghold world of Keris, a science vessel picked up something strange. Not a ship, not a weapon, a signal. It wasn't coded, it wasn't encrypted. Just a phrase, repeating once every hour, on every frequency. We were born in fire. You taught us pain. We learned to remember. We are still watching. In the furthest corners of known space, pirates reported spotting a dark silhouette drifting between nebulae. No lights, no engines active. But when pursued, their ships malfunctioned. Hulls cracked. Systems died. No one dared go closer. Eventually, they stopped speaking of it at all. They didn't want to attract it. Back on Zarkar Prime, what was left of the old educational system had been restructured. A new course was mandatory across all age levels: Galactic Truth and the Human Reckoning. Children learned now what their parents had been denied: about Earth, about the cleansing, about the war that erased a species but planted the seeds for a different kind of return. They studied the warship not as a threat, but as a warning. A symbol of what happens when you push something so far into the dark that it becomes something else entirely. And in that darkness, Oblivion's fist waited. It floated in a space with no stars, surrounded by nothing but vacuum and time. Inside, the revenants still stood in their rows, untouched by age or fatigue. Not dead, not asleep, simply waiting. Revenant. One stood alone in the command core, the same recording hovering before him, the image of a child with a chipped toy soldier, a world that no longer existed, frozen in a single smile. A voice echoed in the chamber. They've changed. It was the ship's AI, Reaper, calm, observant. He didn't respond. Their governments have fallen, their children now learn truth. They fear the past. Still no reply. Then Reaper asked what it had never asked before. Will you forgive them? Revenant 01 stared into the hollow stars beyond the hull and whispered, "Forgiveness is for the living." A pause, then, "We are not that anymore." The galaxy spun on, unaware of when or if the humans would ever return again. But every species now lived with the same thought in the back of their minds, pulsing like a silent beat in the dark. They are still out there, and they never forget. The room was silent. Not the quiet kind that comes with peace, but the heavy silence that presses against your chest like a storm about to break. Ambassador Reeve stood tall, even as the chains dug into his wrists. His face, bloodied but proud, stared down the Galactic Council, a circle of alien elites who believed themselves above justice. He didn't speak. Not anymore. They had beaten the words out of him days ago. Around him, the grand chamber buzzed with whispers from 100 species. Some pitied him, most didn't. Humanity was new to the stars, too emotional, too aggressive, too human. The council didn't like what they couldn't control. High Chancellor Virene, a long-necked being with silver scales and cold eyes, finally stood. Her voice echoed across the chamber like a blade slicing silk. For crimes against the order of the galaxy, for treason against peace, and for the arrogance of defiance, this human will be executed. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Some stood, some bowed their heads. No one protested. No one except one. In the far back, hidden in the crowd, a woman in a long cloak didn't flinch. Her fingers tapped the small device strapped to her wrist. A tiny green light blinked once. Then again. Then it stayed on. She turned and disappeared into the shadows. Reeve lifted his eyes to the sky above. The chamber was open to space, protected only by a translucent energy dome. Stars shimmered. Peaceful. Indifferent. And then, darkness. The stars blinked out like dying candles, one by one, then a hum, low and growing. The sky wasn't dark because night had fallen. It was dark because something massive blocked out the light. A ship. No, a fleet. Human ships. A message flashed across every holoscreen, every comm device, every mind-linked diplomat in the chamber. Execute one of us, and you will hear from all of us. Humanity remembers. Chancellor Verine's lips twitched. They wouldn't dare, she whispered. But deep down, they all knew. They would, because humans had never let death go unanswered. Reeve's lips curled into a bloody smile. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick with fear. High Chancellor Verine tried to maintain her composure, but her hand trembled as she tapped her datapad. All across the Galactic Council's chamber, representatives rose from their seats, eyes fixed on the blackness above. The dome's protective shield flickered under the pressure of the energy pulsing from the human fleet. None of them had seen this kind of technology before. Humanity had been quiet for years, ever since they were granted limited entry into the Council. The galaxy had thought Earthlings primitive, disorganized, emotional. Turns out they were just patient. Reeve didn't say a word. He just stood there, head raised, eyes locked on the floating banners of the Council. Even in chains, he looked like he was the one holding court. The execution platform began to rise beneath his feet. "Stop the proceedings!" barked a deep voice from the lower row. General Rathkel of the Zor-Thar Alliance stood tall, his forearms clenched into fists. "You saw that message. This isn't the time for pride. They've come for him." Verine shot him a look sharp enough to cut steel. "He was tried under Council law. They must not intimidate us." "They already have," someone else murmured. The dome flickered again. Then, for a second, everything in the chamber went dark. Lights, screens, shields. Just long enough to send a clear message. "We're inside your systems." They came in silence. No explosions, no warnings. Just that awful, creeping blackout that told the Council their false sense of superiority had just crumbled. Humanity hadn't just brought ships, they had brought command. From the shadows of the balcony, the cloaked woman emerged again, now walking calmly down the central aisle. She pulled her hood down. A human. Council guards moved to intercept her, but a voice echoed from every corner of the chamber. "Stand down," it said. "She is not alone." The guards paused. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was human, calm, but had a sharp edge, cold, like the space just beyond that flickering dome. The woman stopped at the base of the execution platform. Reeve looked down, blood trailing from his jawline. She met his gaze and nodded once. He nodded back. Verine's voice cracked through the tension. "This is a breach of Council law. Humanity will face—" The woman cut her off without turning. "You already killed the law when you tortured him. You called it peace, but it was punishment for refusing your demands. We don't follow tyrants. You are not authorized to— You executed a peace envoy." The chamber fell quiet again. "Reeve was here to negotiate, not to bow. You punished him for his spine, and now—" She raised her hand, fingers twitching ever so slightly. "You've declared war without even realizing it." Outside, hundreds of ships began to shift into formation. No weapons fired, no planets threatened. Just the black mass of metal and silence, blotting out half the stars in the sky. Then came the second message, booming across every screen, every channel. "Return the envoy alive, or return him in pieces. Either way, your time is up." The chamber felt smaller now. Every alien in that high, towering hall, built with the arrogance of species who believed they'd tamed the galaxy, suddenly looked cornered. The massive windows above, once a symbol of their cosmic dominance, now served as a haunting reminder. The sky had turned against them. High Chancellor Verine stood paralyzed. Her mouth hung open slightly, words forming but failing. The screens that floated mid-air across the chamber glitched, static buzzing in the ears of every being present. It wasn't a malfunction. It was pressure. Human systems were speaking directly to theirs, as if technology itself had begun to obey Earth's command. "Security!" she hissed. "Seize her! And him!" The woman didn't move. She didn't need to. The council guards took one step toward her, then froze mid-motion, their weapons failing, their armor flickering with sparks. One dropped his rifle altogether as his neural implant screamed inside his skull. Another fell to his knees, clawing at his own visor. "No more games," the woman said softly. She turned to Reeve. His arms hung limp, chained to the steel columns of the execution stand. Blood soaked through his robes, and his lips were cracked, but his gaze still burned. She pulled a small device from her belt and pressed it against the chains. A sound like a sigh and a hiss escaped, and they released. Reeve stumbled, but she caught him. "You came," he said, his voice hoarse, barely a whisper. "We all did." Outside, the human fleet repositioned. Like shifting shadows, thousands of vessels silently created a wall of black metal across the Council's orbit. The light of the nearest sun still glimmered beyond, but the ships refused to let its rays through. "I warned you," General Rathkel muttered. "I said they were emotional. But no one listened when I said emotions make them dangerous." Vereen spun to him. "So what? You'd let them threaten us like this?" He shrugged, two of his arms folding. "I'd rather be alive and insulted than dead and proud." Meanwhile, the other council species began to murmur among themselves. The Kalari delegation blinked their 7 eyes rapidly, clearly shaken. The Izonic, usually calm and analytical, had begun broadcasting frantic mind-link messages to their homeworld. No one wanted to be part of this anymore. Not against humans. Not now. Reeve stood upright, breathing slowly. "You called me arrogant for refusing to let you mine Earth's oceans. You said we were selfish for not offering our young for your genetic trade. You beat me for protecting my people." Vereen gritted her teeth. He stepped forward, and his voice grew stronger. "You thought killing me would send a message? You're right. It did. But not the one you wanted." The woman at his side raised her wrist again. A projection appeared above the chamber. A real-time broadcast. Earth. Billions of humans gathered in the streets, staring at the skies. Cities unified, differences forgotten. Races, creeds, even nations. None of it mattered now. They stood together, waiting for what came next. Reeve looked at them all, one by one. "We begged to join your galaxy. We tried to play nice. We followed your laws, and you chained me like an animal." He turned to Vereen, his words slicing now. "So now we're done asking." The chamber dimmed further. One ship began to descend into atmosphere, massive, sleek, dark as void. It hovered just above the Capitol's spire, unmoving, like a divine punishment waiting for a signal. Vereen took a step back. "You'll doom your kind to war." Reeve raised an eyebrow. "We were born in war, raised in it, perfected by it. We don't fear it like you do." The human woman looked around, her eyes scanning every alien face. "Choose," she said. "Stand down and let him walk free, or see what happens when you cross a species with nothing left to lose." A moment passed. Then another. The Kalari ambassador stood. "Release the human." Vereen's jaw dropped. "What?" The Izonic followed. Then the Uvara. Then dozens more. One by one, the council fractured before her eyes. And for the first time in centuries, the mighty Galactic Council was afraid. The chains hit the ground with a soft clatter that echoed louder than any declaration. It wasn't just metal falling, it was power, symbolism, a cosmic order unraveling before the eyes of 1,000 alien dignitaries. Reeve rolled his shoulders slowly, the stiffness in his muscles groaning from the days of abuse. He didn't wince, He didn't break. He just breathed. For the first time in weeks, he was unbound. The woman by his side, Captain Ayla Wren, commander of the Covert Strike Wing Ghost Protocol, gave him a subtle nod, then turned to face the chamber. "Anyone who attempts to lay a hand on the envoy again," she said, her voice now amplified through every speaker in the room, "will be considered an enemy of Earth, and enemies of Earth don't last long anymore." She wasn't wrong. The Council had seen wars, civil wars, trade wars, border skirmishes. But never like this. Never against a species that didn't fight for dominance or territory, but for vengeance, for pride, for one of their own. Vireen looked like she was aging by the second. Her silver-scaled skin dulled, and her once regal posture began to collapse under the weight of the room turning against her. She wasn't just losing control, she was losing relevance. "Traitors!" she whispered, as more ambassadors stepped away from her central platform. "Cowards!" Rathkel, still standing off to the side, chuckled bitterly. "Or maybe we're just realists, Vireen. Humanity doesn't bluff. You thought their anger was a weakness. Turns out it was their sharpest weapon." Vireen's voice cracked. This sets a dangerous precedent. If we bend to Earth now, they'll rule by fear." "No," Reeves said finally, stepping down from the platform, flanked by Ayla. "We won't rule. We'll remember. And so will you." Ayla pressed a small disc against her wrist, activating a short-range transport. Within seconds, Reeves' image began to flicker, then vanished entirely. He was gone. Extracted. Back on board one of the ships waiting in the black sky above. And that sky was still watching. The chamber remained frozen, hundreds of delegates still staring at where he had stood. None dared speak first. Everyone waited to see what Earth would do next. Ayla didn't leave right away. She let the silence stretch. "Reeve was the last chance you had to keep Earth at the table. You threw that away when you tortured him," she said, her voice colder now. "We won't be petitioning for membership anymore. We'll be redefining it." "Are you threatening the Council?" hissed one of the lesser delegates, a thin-spined, multi-eyed creature from the Edge systems. Ayla turned toward him slowly. "We're correcting a mistake. The galaxy thought humanity was weak because we asked to join instead of conquer. We offered friendship instead of war. But now..." She stepped back, placing 2 fingers on the transport disk. "Now you'll see what we really are." She vanished. A heartbeat passed. Then, for the first time in its history, the chamber's main doors were not dismissed by ceremony or dismissed by guards. They were breached. Explosive charges detonated, blowing the towering entrance inward. Smoke poured in. And from the fog walked 12 armored human soldiers, black-clad, each bearing the insignia of Earth's new Terran Defense Accord. Not a shot was fired, not a word spoken. They didn't need to. They walked to the center of the chamber, placed a sealed black box on the floor, and left just as silently as they came. The Council approached it slowly, cautiously, like it might explode. When it opened, a hologram flickered up. Reeves' face, bruised and battered but unbowed. "This is not a declaration of war," he said, calm and solemn. "This is a warning. Earth will no longer ask to be accepted. We are the future of this galaxy. You can walk beside us, or be left behind." Then the hologram shifted, to Earth itself, cities, children, scientists, soldiers, planets now colonized under human flags, ships under construction, AI protocols running planetary defense nets, and beneath it all, 4 words pulsed on every screen. Humanity remembers. Always. On board the TSV Revenant, orbiting just beyond the edge of the Galactic Council's planet, Reeves stood before the massive viewport, watching the sky. It was still black. Not because of nightfall, but because Earth's fleet was still there, unmoving, unblinking, like a hand hovering over a switch the galaxy couldn't afford to let flip. He rested a hand on the glass, the cool hum of the ship vibrating through his skin. It was surreal, standing here after weeks of captivity. He should have been dead. He was supposed to be. The Council had made a spectacle of him. Broken bones, isolation, no communication, no hope. And now they were afraid of him, not because of what he could do, but because of what humanity would do for him. Behind him the doors hissed open, and Ayla Wren stepped inside. She didn't salute, didn't posture. She just leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "You should rest." Reeve turned, a small smile tugging at the corner of his bruised lips. "I've rested enough. In chains." She said nothing, just stared at him. There was pride in her eyes, but also worry. "The Council is panicking," she finally said. 17 species have requested emergency talks. Some want protection. Others want to surrender influence to Earth, to avoid a full war. Reeve didn't blink. "They think this is about power." "Isn't it?" "No," he said. "It's about pain. It's about being humiliated in front of the galaxy we tried so hard to be part of. We begged for unity. They gave us chains." Ayla stepped forward. "And now the chain is around their necks." He nodded. "Let them choke on it." Across the fleet, Earth's military was on high alert. Dozens of ships, some larger than anything the Council had ever seen, lined up in strategic orbits, blocking trade routes, intercepting outbound communications, even disabling satellites across Council-controlled sectors. But no shots had been fired. Not yet. It was the waiting that scared them most. The Revenant's tactical deck buzzed as a holographic display blinked to life, showing an incoming hail, encrypted, originating from Council Prime. Ayla glanced at Reeve. "Vereen. Put her through." The projection sharpened. Vereen's face appeared, smaller now, powerless. Her proud posture was gone, her tone clipped and desperate. "We demand the withdrawal of all Terran vessels from orbit. This show of force violates over 60 interstellar treaties." "You executed a diplomat," Reeve interrupted coldly. "You don't get to talk about treaties." "Reeve, please. The Council is fracturing. Your actions have caused chaos." "Our actions?" he barked, eyes narrowing. "You mean yours? I didn't shatter the Council. You did when you decided a human life meant less than your pride." Her face darkened. "What do you want?" Ayla stepped into the frame beside him. "We want the truth made public. Every record, every moment of Reeve's torture, every order you gave. We want the galaxy to know what you did." Vereen flinched. "That would destabilize the central core." "Good," Ayla snapped. "Maybe it's time something else took its place." Reeve leaned closer. "You will resign, publicly. You will admit your crimes. And then you will disappear. Because if we ever see you again anywhere in this galaxy, we won't send a message. We'll send fire." The line went silent. Vereen stared at them, eyes searching for a way out. There wasn't one. The feed cut. For a moment there was peace aboard the Revenant. A quiet hum. The breath before the universe shifted. Then came the call from Earth High Command. "Ambassador Reeve, permission to initiate Phase 2? He stared at the stars. He knew what Phase 2 meant. Targeted disruption, economic shutdowns, deep AI sabotage of the Council's infrastructure. No bullets, just collapse. He closed his eyes. "They need to remember," he told himself, "or this happens again." Permission granted. Across the fleet, signals launched. In minutes, the Council's banking AI failed. In seconds, food logistics in the outer colonies glitched, rerouting all supplies through Earth-protected lanes. A message was broadcast galaxy-wide. "This is not conquest. This is correction." Reeve turned to Ayla. Now we wait. For what? For them to beg. The collapse didn't come with fire. It came with silence. One by one, galactic council systems began to dim. Not explode. Not burn. Just go quiet. Banking networks scrambled. Transport lanes rerouted without authorization. Automated defense grids flickered and turned inward, locking their own fleets in hangars. Communication lines buzzed with static, then died altogether. Earth didn't need to fire a single weapon. They were the weapon. Reeve stood in the central command of the TSV Revenant, eyes fixed on the cascading data streaming across the holodisplay. Every second, another system fell into chaos. Not from violence, from precision. Every AI hub the Council had once controlled now stuttered, faltered, or rerouted to Earth's oversight protocols. Years of Terran code, buried deep inside their networks, sleeping, waiting, had awoken all at once. They hadn't just joined the galaxy's tech. They had quietly rewritten it. Behind him, Ayla stared at the same stream of collapsing infrastructure. Her arms were crossed, but her jaw was tight. "We're shutting down their spine," she muttered. "How long before they start eating each other?" Reeve didn't answer right away. His expression was hard, distant. "They already are." Reports were pouring in from every quadrant. Border systems refusing to take council orders. Trade federations declaring neutrality. Mercenary groups flipping loyalty to Earth in exchange for system security. And deep inside the core sectors, riots had broken out on at least 4 council worlds. Not against humans, against the council itself. Ayla pulled up a feed, uncensored, showing one of those uprisings. On the wealthy planet of Kelthera, a crowd of protesters stormed a data tower, chanting in hundreds of different alien dialects. Some held makeshift signs, others carried torches, but the message was the same. No more lies, no more chains. The people weren't afraid of Earth. They were inspired by it. The Galactic Council, once the unshakable authority of interstellar politics, was cracking under its own weight, and Earth was just holding the mirror. "Reeve," Ayla said quietly, "they're asking for you." He turned. A second feed was incoming, this time from a private frequency, not from Vereen. She had vanished, likely in hiding or under protection from the few loyal systems she had left. This was different. A council elder, Isolan, ancient, neutral, and feared for her wisdom. Reeve accepted the transmission. The elder appeared, her form flickering like fog, soft and translucent. Her voice, though alien, was thick with gravity. "You have broken the back of a 1,000-year order, human." "I didn't break it," Reeve replied calmly. "I just exposed how fragile it really was." She nodded once. "Then let us speak truth. The galaxy cannot survive like this. Earth has proven itself. Not just as a force, but as a voice. One we chose not to listen to." Reeve's brow lifted. "Is that an apology?" Isolan paused. "It is a reckoning." The silence hung for a moment, heavy with something unspoken. Then she added, "We want peace. But we do not want to be ruled." "We don't want to rule," Reeve said. "We want a seat, a voice, a place where being human doesn't mean being punished for having a spine." "Then help us build something new." That made Ayla raise her head. Her eyes flicked to Reeve, curious, suspicious. "Start over?" he asked. "The council is done. The systems are rebelling. Even now, dozens of ambassadors are abandoning their posts. Vereen has vanished. The illusion is broken," Isolan said. "We need something better, and we need Earth to be at the center of it." Ayla leaned in, muting the feed for a second. "You know this could be a trap." Reeve didn't look away from the screen. "Number, this is surrender in the form of diplomacy." He unmuted the call. "Then we'll help rebuild," he said. "But under our terms." Isilon nodded slowly. "Then speak them." Reeve took a breath. "Transparency, equality, protection for new worlds, representation for emerging species, and a unified defense system not controlled by any single world, including Earth." Ayla blinked. That last part surprised even her. Isilon's fog-like face smiled faintly. Spoken like a true leader. The feed ended. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ayla asked, "You trust her?" "No," Reeve said. "But I trust the galaxy has seen what we're capable of, and they'd rather sit with us than stand against us." She smirked. "So we're not just feared anymore?" He shook his head. "We're necessary." The galaxy, as always, didn't fall apart all at once. It splintered. Days after Isilon's message and Earth's firm grip on the galaxy's neural networks, things began to settle. On the surface. Major trade routes reopened under Terran oversight. Black market arms trades dried up overnight. Pirate fleets, once protected by corrupt council factions, were hunted down ruthlessly by Terran ghost ships. Reeve's face, once forgotten in prison, now played on every system across 100 worlds as a symbol of resolve. But not everyone was ready to kneel. In the shadows of a dying star system known as Vilethera, a message was being written, not in words, but in blood. On the bridge of the Vrek Dominion dreadnought, Chancellor Vereen sat surrounded by the last of her loyalists. Her scales had dulled into a sickly gray. Her eyes no longer shimmered with confidence, but with something colder. Obsession. "They call him a hero," she hissed, voice distorted from the burn that scarred half her face, courtesy of her escape from Council Prime. "They think humanity has saved them. Fools." Her war minister, General Surak, clicked his mandibles in agreement. "The weak cling to the strongest voice in the room. That voice is Earth, for now." Vereen turned slowly. "Then we silence it." She stepped forward and revealed what the others had not yet seen. A black, oblong stasis pod. Inside, a half-living creature floated, tangled in wires, pulsing softly. It wasn't alien. It was human. "What is this?" Surak asked, his voice cautious. "A soldier," Vereen whispered. "One of the many the Council captured during the early Earth expansion. We ran experiments. On their resistance, their biology, their minds. This one didn't break. So we turned it into something better." Surak's eyes narrowed. "You made a weapon." "I made a message," she growled. Her fingers danced across the console, and the pod began to drain. Across the galaxy, Reeve sat in a strategy briefing aboard the Revenant, surrounded by the Terran Accord's most trusted commanders. Ayla stood beside him, monitoring intel feeds from rogue systems. "The bulk of the Council has accepted our terms," Ayla said, pointing to the updated map. 37 sectors are now operating under transitional agreements. Trade is stable. Riots are down. Even the X-Zen leadership has requested a cultural exchange program with Earth. Reeve gave a small smile. "From prisoners to professors. Not bad." But then the room dimmed. An alert blared. Unauthorized broadcast on a priority emergency channel. No one moved. All eyes turned to the main holoscreen. The feed came alive. Not with Vereen's face, but something far worse. A Terran outpost, located in the distant Curvos system, was under siege. Fires raged. Human soldiers lay in twisted heaps. Entire buildings crumbled in silence. And at the center of it all stood a figure. Bipedal, armored in obsidian plates, face hidden behind a breathing mask that hissed with every slow, mechanical inhale. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its message was carved into the outpost's walls in seared plasma. "Earth is not invincible." Reeve's blood ran cold. "Pause it," he snapped. Ayla zoomed in on the figure. It moved like a human. It fought like a human. But something in the way it stood, the unnatural twitching of its hands, the faint glow beneath the armor, was wrong. "Is that one of ours?" a captain asked. "No," Ayla said quietly. "That's one of theirs." Reeve leaned forward. "Find out how many more there are." But Ayla didn't need to check. New alerts were already flashing across the system. Attacks, small but precise, remote colonies, diplomatic posts, research stations, each one targeted with surgical brutality, and always, always that same figure. Or one just like it. "This isn't rebellion," Ayla said, her voice sharp now. "This is a campaign." Reeve stood slowly, a storm building behind his eyes. "She's trying to restart the war." Ayla looked at him. "What do we do?" He didn't hesitate. "We find her, and we end this for good." The hunt began with silence. No speeches, no warnings, just orders moving down the Terran chain of command like cold wind over steel. Reeve stood in full dress uniform aboard the TSV Revenant, though his heart was already deep in the void. Across the galaxy, Earth had tried to rebuild, to bring order without blood, but Vereen had chosen a darker path. She hadn't just vanished. She had planned. And now her shadow puppets were slicing through the fragile peace, one outpost at a time. Ayla entered the command deck, her face grim. "We found her." Reeve turned sharply. "Where?" "Veilthera. Unmapped system. Radiation fields kept it off most charts. She's operating from a Dominion dreadnought, running black core energy. That thing's a flying fortress." He absorbed it all without blinking. "And the enhanced?" "Confirmed. Genetic profile matches a Terran Marine. Missing for 5 years. We think she's using neural overlays and adaptive bioarmor. There may be more." Reeve's jaw tightened. "Then we end it now. No diplomacy, no offers, no terms." Ayla nodded. "I've already mobilized Strike Group Theta." The Revenant and her sister ships, stealth-class Terran destroyers, made the jump through slipstream space with lethal purpose. Within hours, they were at the edge of Veilthera's system, their hulls cloaked in ion shadows. From orbit, the Dominion dreadnought looked like a gaping wound in space, blacker than the void itself, pulsing with power. Reeve stood at the front of the drop bay, suited in combat armor. The burns on his body from the Council's imprisonment still ached under the plates, but he welcomed the pain. It reminded him why he was here. Ayla suited up beside him, locking her gauntlets. "You sure about this?" "We finish what they started." The drop pods launched in silence, cutting through the radiation clouds like comets. They smashed into the hull of Vereen's dreadnought, magnetic claws locking in. Doors blew open, and Terran forces poured in like a tide of vengeance. Inside, the corridors were twisted and dim. Dominion tech pulsed with sickly green light, and the air tasted of oil and decay. But Reeve moved forward like a blade, his team slicing through the resistance. The enhanced soldiers were there, fast, brutal, distorted versions of their human selves. But Earth had trained for this. The first wave fell. Then the second. Reeve came face to face with one of the altered humans in the central engine core. Its breathing mask hissed, glowing red. For a moment, it hesitated. Some piece of its old self flickered behind the madness. Reeve stepped closer. "You're not a weapon," he said softly. "You're a soldier. You served. You bled for your people. This isn't who you are." But the thing screamed, inhuman, distorted, and lunged. Reeve met it with steel. The fight was brutal. Close. Reeve took 2 hits to the chest, armor cracking, ribs screaming. But in the end, he drove his blade through the thing's neck and held it until it stopped twitching. He didn't mourn it. He promised it peace. They reached the command bridge minutes later. The doors opened with a hiss of stale air. Vereen sat alone on her throne. She looked ruined, her face gaunt, the fire gone from her eyes. But her pride clung to her like rusted armor. "I see you brought fire," she said, smiling weakly. "That's what I always feared most, not your kindness, your rage." Reeve stepped forward, visor up, face bare, scars visible. "You wanted fear. You wanted control. You made your choice." "And so did you," she whispered. Ayla aimed her rifle. "One shot and this ends." But Reeve raised a hand. "Number not like this." He approached Vereen, pulled a data spike from his belt, and jammed it into the terminal beside her throne. "Every secret, every experiment, every crime, you're going to be remembered for them. Not as a ruler, not as a chancellor." He stared into her eyes. "But as the mistake that made us unstoppable." Vereen hissed and lunged, but Ayla dropped her with a clean shot to the chest. The ship's AI core began transmitting, live, to every council-linked system. The footage, the files, the truth. And just like that, the galaxy saw the rot. Back aboard the Revenant, hours later, Reeve stood before a crowd of Terran officers. Behind him, the stars were bright again. "This war was never about territory," he said. "It was about being seen, being respected. And now," he looked to the sky, "now they see us,